Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to have you. I hope you all made your way in past the crane that we have outside. There's a lot, it's May, it's the growing season, and it's also the painting season. Who knew? But thank you so much for being here. We're always very glad to host the Historical Society at Grace Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Matt Pensinger. Please grab me if you need anything, and enjoy your lunch and enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Matt. Can we have a round of applause for our two BLT sponsors today, Dorothy Hatchert and Ann Gilbert. Oh, and for those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Jason Alari. I'm the Executive Director of the Historical Society. Our sponsors help pay for some of the refreshments, the rental of Grace Hall, and the recordings of the BLTs with the Community Media Center. So we're very grateful for all of our sponsors for the BLTs. On your table, we want to announce and make sure that you take away this flyer. This is June 6th, our 85th anniversary variety show. It's a free event. It's going to be held at the Arts Center, downtown Westminster. Be sure to attend. It's going to be a fun evening. Some of you may know in the 1950s there was a play done called The House That Jacob Built by Dorothy Elderdice. We're going to do a scene from that play. It should be a lot of fun. We'll be premiering our 85th anniversary documentary video. Some of you are featured in that video, and a lot of other fun announcements along the way. On the reverse side of the flyer, there are some details about the event. So please make sure you mark your calendars for that event. There's also a flyer going around about upcoming events at the Historical Society if you're interested. We're thrilled today to have Deb Bowers with us. Deb has been working in farmland preservation since 1990. As a writer and editor of Farmland Preservation Report, a national newsletter, and as co-author of Holding Our Ground, Protecting America's Farms and Farmland with Tom Daniels, published by Island Press in 1997. It remains a leading resource in the field. She then added grant writing for land preservation and became a project manager for land trusts in Baltimore County, proposing and implementing grant agreements with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Rural Legacy Program that enabled protection of land through conservation easements. For many years, she was employed full-time as the preservation specialist and then program manager for the Carroll County, Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program. She's organized the Farmland Preservation Roundtable for the nation's top state and local farmland preservation programs. She was the co-organizer of a national farmland preservation conference in May 2014. Her newsletter website, farmlandpreservationreport.com, continues to be a resource for the profession. The Historical Society is a proud partner of the Land Preservation Board here in Carroll County. We house the board's archival records at the Historical Society. We're also delighted to show you this map here. It's from 1919. This was donated by Deb's organization to the Historical Society earlier this year. It's a Maryland geological survey map of soil in Carroll County, and if you have a moment at the end of the presentation, you can take a look. So, without further delay, I'd like to introduce Deb to the podium.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to the pastor for having this incredible hall. It must be the biggest hall in Westminster. I don't know, but anyway, thank you for that introduction. And the map that he is talking about over here is a soils map of Carroll County. Yes, it was published in 1919, but guess what? Soils don't change very much unless they are moved around, which of course happens quite a bit. But if you live out in the farming areas, the soils are the same, and you'll see them depicted on this map. And today I'll also be giving to the Historical Society this soil survey of Carroll County, Maryland that was published to go with that map. And it's a wonderful introduction and history of agriculture in Carroll County. So if you're at the Historical Society and want to do some research and further reading, this is a wonderful little booklet. I know Ralph Robertson will like looking at it. So anyway, so we have the first slide up. Okay. So I'm Deb Bowers, and a little bit about me, although Jason did a great introduction. I did co-author a book many years ago, but not too many people know about the field of farmland preservation, so it's still very much used by people who work in the field of farmland preservation. And I worked on the newsletter. I was editor and publisher of the newsletter for 23 years, and then came out to Carroll County, and I'm very, very happy to have been part of the Carroll County program. I don't know if you all know it or not, but Carroll County really has one of the most remarkable programs in the United States. So it's something you could be proud of. And I'll be telling you all about why that's so in this presentation. So this is the reason why farmland preservation came into being. It's because of the anxiety produced by the uncertainty of what's going to happen to your agricultural land, because this is the United States and the law is on the side of the developer. And if the zoning laws allow a subdivision like this to occur, then in all likelihood it's going to occur. And the only thing that can prevent that is a change in the zoning law, which most local governments do not want to do. Or the alternative is to pay farmers not to develop their land because they have a great deal of equity in their land, and that is the only other fair way of dealing with the situation. So 100 years ago, Carroll County had a very large dairying business. And this soil survey mentions that the farms here were very well kept, beautifully kept, and that the buildings were large and well cared for. And so this is the beginning of farmland preservation, is when you have agriculture that is productive and profitable. So you have a history of very strong agricultural industry here in Carroll County. This is a slide that from the American Farmland Trust that describes the problem of farmland loss in the United States. And the American Farmland Trust is a national nonprofit organization that does research about the farmland loss problem. And they've been doing that since 1980, 81. And so there have been 26 million acres lost to development since 1982 up until 2017, which was when this study was done. So that's 57% of new development occurred on agricultural land, and the conversion of agricultural land to development has continued to slow. So as you can see in this graph, believe it or not, it has slowed down. The worst period for farmland loss in the United States and here in Maryland was the 1990s. And I remember that period very well. That's when I started my newsletter. And I'm sure Ralph remembers that period. Ralph Robertson, by the way, is the former program manager for the Carroll County program, and he's the person who brought me here. So you can see that it was the worst in the 1990s, and it has gone down. The threat has gone down, but it's still there. And whenever you lose a farm to development, it's very upsetting to the people who live in the neighborhood. And it's a loss for the entire county, physically. And this is a graph that shows you number of acres lost to what kind of use. And the use that is the most destructive is what's called low-density residential use, where a farm is cut up into pieces of 2 acres or 3 acres or 4 or 5 acres. It's very wasteful. It's too big to use a lawnmower on and too small to farm. So it's been a problem. But of course, a lot of people. How many of you live on a 2-acre lot or something like that? 2 or 3 acre lot. It's a lot of people live that way, and that's. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's what has caused farmland loss. This is a National Agricultural Land Study. It was produced in 1980, and it was the first time that on a national level the loss of farmland to development was recognized and studied and researched. And this study is what spurred the creation of the American Farmland Trust, which was the first national organization to look at the farmland loss problem in the United States. And I want to read this to you. I don't like to read from slides, but this deserves to be read. It's just a good description. The process by which agricultural land is converted to non-farm uses. The conversion of agricultural land to non-agricultural use is a complex process, often taking place over a period of 15, 20 or more years, and involving the interplay among farm profitability, urban growth, land values, personal life cycle considerations, in other words, a farmer wanting to retire, community expectations, and government incentives and regulations. The moment the developer's bulldozer blade first digs into the earth or the chainsaw first rips into the bark is only the culmination of a process that begins long before. Okay, and I think we all understand that, but not many people think about it on a regular basis, except me maybe, I don't know. So in 1980, I don't know if you can see this graphic or not very well, but zoning was still a relatively new thing when it came to protecting agricultural land in 1980. It was almost unheard of. But if you can see the hash marks, or can you see the state of Maryland there? And you can see the counties that had already instituted agricultural protection zoning as of 1980. Maryland was way ahead of everybody else because the development pressure here was so great, and we were losing so much farmland so quickly that people were very upset about it and began to talk to their representatives in the Maryland General Assembly about the problem. So this was just the beginning of that. This is a map that was put out by the American Farmland Trust in 2022. The red blotches that you see are lands that they deemed to be under threat of development at that time. Here's a bit closer up. The conversion of agricultural land. This shows what was converted between 2001 and 2016. So a 15-year period, Maryland lost 30,000 acres to what they called urban and highly developed land use, and 72,600 to that low-density residential. So that tells you the low-density residential is almost, more than twice as high as the other uses that use up agricultural land. So in total, 102,700 acres of Maryland's ag land were converted to those two uses within that 15 years. Here's a map from 1911. Looks good, doesn't it? I want you to take a look at this map. Do you see those two dark lines? You know, most people would think those are roads, but you know what they are, don't you? Railroads. They're railroads. One of the great advantages for Carroll County in terms of protecting agriculture is the fact that you don't have any U.S. highways or interstate highways running through your county. That was one of the first things I noticed about Carroll County. You've got I-70 way down in that lower corner, but you have not been greatly affected by that in terms of land use except down in that area. So this map, it's pretty much the same, isn't it? You haven't had an interstate highway come through, and I'm speaking from experience. I live in Harford County, and I've seen firsthand what happens when you have an interstate highway and two U.S. highways running right through the middle of the county. It's not pretty. That doesn't show up very well, but that is a more recent map that shows that no further big highways have been built. So this is Long Island, New York. Why do I have a slide of Long Island, New York in the middle of this presentation? I'll tell you why. Long Island, being right next to New York City, was the most threatened area in the United States at the time in terms of farmland laws, except for maybe Orange County, California, next to Los Angeles. Long Island was growing so rapidly, the growth was coming out from New York City so rapidly that it had all been developed except for the far east end where Suffolk County is, Suffolk County, New York. And they had, historically they raised ducks, they raised potatoes. It was a very active agricultural area. So the farmers in Suffolk County began to be very worried about the future of their industry. A lot of farmers wanted to stay in farming, but the pressure was great, very great in terms of selling out and becoming a multimillionaire for doing so. The county executive in that county and the planners and some farmers got together and decided that they were going to do something about it. So Suffolk County, New York was the very first to tackle the problem. And around maybe about 5 years later, Maryland started looking at how to solve the problem of farmland loss. The New England states, the Mid-Atlantic states, and these other states started to look at the problem and seriously consider what they could do about farmland loss. So I went up to Suffolk County when I was publishing my newsletter because I wanted to interview these people. I wanted to understand what drove them to tackle this enormous problem. So that gentleman on the left, that's Lee Koppelman, he was a planner, a land use planner for Suffolk County. When I interviewed him, he was a professor at the State University of New York. The man on the right is Mr. Talmadge. He was the farmer who his father actually was the first family to put their land in land preservation in 1974. This is a historic photograph for anybody in farmland preservation. This is the very first signing of a conservation easement. Now, I guess I should talk about what a conservation easement is for those of you who don't know. A conservation easement is a deed restriction on the land that keeps it from being developed because it's a deed, it's recorded in the land records. And It requires conservation to be done on the property, and it prohibits development of that land. And in farmland preservation programs that are run at the county and state level, the farmer is paid the difference between the agricultural value of that land and the development value of that land. So they are compensated for foregoing development. But anyway, the Talmadge family, and that's Mr. and Mrs. Talmadge to the left there 25 years later, they're still happy that they preserved their land. And it was a good interview to find out how they did it. And they were just wanting to stay in farming. That's all there is to it. And they had neighbors who wanted to do the same thing. But they knew that somebody had to be first, because it's a courageous thing to say no to multi-million-dollar offers and say, no, I want to stay in farming, and this is a fair way to do it. So this slide just gives you an idea of the states that are running farmland preservation programs, and this is an average annual allocation for farmland preservation when things are good. Things aren't always that good. Maryland has had several years where there was no funding available, and that happens occasionally. Like it's happened here in Carroll County just last week. Your commissioners cut all the funding for farmland preservation here in Carroll County. I don't know if you know that or not, but it does happen occasionally. So, but as you can see, it takes a great deal of money to run these programs. Now, what happened here in Carroll County back in 1972 when I was still in high school is that a farm out on Uniontown Road was proposed to be developed. And maybe you all remember this. It was called the Meadows. And it was a large farm. Everything inside of those red lines was proposed to be cut up. All that land was going to be cut up into various size pieces, 3 acres here, 5 acres there, 10 acres over there. And the gentleman who lived on the farm to the left, his name was Walter Bay. Maybe some of you remember Walt Bay. He was the extension director for many years here. He was very upset about the change in the community that would happen if this development occurred. And he tried to stop it by by suing, basically, the Planning and Zoning Commission. I believe, if anything is wrong, Ralph, let me know. He sued the Planning Commission for approving this development plan. And it went to the courts, and the circuit court said that, well, the Planning Commission is just doing their job, because there was nothing in the zoning code to prevent this from happening. But the judge in that case pointed out that, guess what, Carroll County citizens? You can control your own destiny. You can change your zoning code any way that you want to, that you think will work. And so within a few years, that started, and the zoning code was eventually changed to be somewhat more protective. So anyway, unfortunately, however, the farm on Uniontown Road was developed, and I'm sure you have a bunch of happy people living there on their 5-acre pieces or their 10-acre, 15, I think there was one 15-acre piece, one 10-acre piece was developed there. And as you can see, the Walt Bay farm is still there. And there's Walt Bay. I had to put that in there. This is from 1993 when he retired. Okay, Okay, some milestones in Carroll County ag land preservation. I want you all to know that, the Carroll County program is almost unique. Well, I would say it is unique in the state of Maryland. It has a history of being run by your local people, your local farmers, basically. And it has been an opportunity to innovate and create whole new ways of doing things. And it was really my privilege to work here. I got to try some new things too. Ralph tried some new things. And your commissioner form of government here, I also have to say, gave us the latitude to think outside the box and solve the problems as we went along. I know very well this program that you have in Carroll County couldn't even exist in Harford County because we have a county executive form of government there, and they like to be in control of everything. And you can't get anything new on the books without a long process and some difficulties. But anyway, that's beside the point. But I thought you'd want to hear that. But anyway, so some milestones are that in 1980, your first easement was done. In 1987, Bill Powell became the first program administrator, first full-time administrator. And by 1992, Bill Powell knew that something else needed to be done because farms were still being lost too rapidly. And he created the Critical Farms program, which basically helped farmers buy a farm. And then require them to put it under easement as part of that process. Great program, has not been replicated in very many places in the United States. And then in 1998, the Rural Legacy Program was created by the Department of Natural Resources, so we also take advantage of that here in Carroll County. The preservation specialist was created in 2002 so that Bill Powell could have somebody to help him because it was getting to be a heavy workload, and that's when Ralph came onto the scene. Then 2003 was the creation of the county program, and that happened because very often the state program was without money or without adequate money. And so it gave Carroll County farmers another option. In 2020, we celebrated 75,000 acres preserved here in Carroll County. That's a remarkable achievement, really is. So the first farm to be preserved was by Ray and Viola Haynes. Anybody know them? Remember them? It was a crop farm on Black Schoolhouse Road, and it's now owned by Michael and Anita Haynes, who attended our last annual meeting of the Carroll County Land Trust. I'm on the Carroll County Land Trust Board of Directors, and we like to recognize people who served in one of our milestones. So 1980, first one, and it's still in the family. In 2003, we celebrated 40,000 acres, and that in the upper left is Bill Powell. And beside him, I think that's Senator Jim Clark, isn't it, Ralph? Yeah. And there's Ralph in the lower left, and that was a great celebration. Very nice dinner that night. So there are 4 programs. The Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, which we call MALF, M-A-L-P-F, and then the Critical Farms Program, the Rural Legacy Program, and the Carroll County Program. And my little add-on was the add-on program in 2018, which is when somebody with a preserved farm wants to buy an adjacent piece. I've had people who wanted to retire a lot that was next to their farm, and even a 2-acre lot. That's a big expense. But we paid them the amount per acre that we paid them for the easement. They were happy to get it. It helped them with their settlement. And we've had other pieces that, 6 acres, 10 acres, 15. All I did was rewrite the easement to include that acreage in the easement restrictions. So it's helped quite a few people. Okay, so the state program was the first in the United States. Massachusetts created their program the same year, but I think ours was the first one to be up and running. By the way, farmland preservation is bipartisan, or nonpartisan, however you want to look at it. Republicans and Democrats are together on this one. It has always been that way. And Carroll County has always been the leading participant, and I have to credit Bill Powell with that. He was just a go-getter, and he went out and he talked to people and made them feel comfortable about the program. And really put us out in front, and we've kept that leadership role ever since. And there's Bill and Ralph at the 75,000 acre celebration. Bill pretty much invented the Critical Farms program. Am I right, Ralph? He pretty much invented it. So how it works is Carroll County will pay 52.5% of the purchase price or the appraised fair market value, whichever is less. And so that farmer only has to borrow the remaining portion. So then we have an agreement with them, and in return for helping them buy the farm, they have to put it under easement with the state program. And depending on how many farms we send down to the state that year, we might get all of that money back, or we might get a portion of it back when they are paid for their easement. And they get to keep the rest of the money, whatever is above that. The Rural Legacy Program is run by the Department of Natural Resources, but this program can be used to preserve farms or other types of land. I think in Carroll County it was almost invariably farmland that we were saving with the Rural Legacy Program. And then the county's own program is also just a model of innovation in terms of what we offer to the farmer in terms of how he gets paid. There were 2 payment options. One is through installments of tax-free interest. It was just the greatest program. So what we did was, and there was another gentleman involved in the program. His name's Jeff Everett. And he, the tax-free interest payment part of it was already existing, but he took it and he made it work even better. And what we did was we paid a high percentage value in exchange for the farmer lowering the principal amount of that, the cost of that easement. So the tax-free interest has always been very popular. So if you're getting 5% interest over 20 years tax-free, and at the end of the 20 years, you get the full principal. So guess what? 5 times 20 equals 100, so you're getting double your money at the end of the 20 years, whatever the offer was. So how do taxpayers benefit from AgPres? I wrote this a really long time ago, and I'm sure there are other ways too, but these were the main ones that I could think of. So first of all, to the local ag economy, to the local ag industry, it's an alternative. You don't have to be faced with selling to a developer or retiring and being poor for the rest of your life. If you sell an easement, it pays your equity, it pays you your equity in that land. And so it's a great alternative. Strengthens the local and state ag economy, preserves the countryside, which everyone likes, improves soil and water conservation because the deed of easement requires soil conservation and protection of streams on the property. And it assures fiscal soundness by limiting residential development. You know, this was almost a new concept to a lot of elected officials who really hadn't thought about it before. But it does not increase tax revenue to have new houses built all over the county. It just doesn't. Why? Because people moving into new houses require all kinds of services, but it costs to have new homes, whereas farms and agriculture, very little cost to the local government. When I was publishing my newsletter, I used to write about that topic quite a bit. There were counties in the United States where the elected officials thought that farmland preservation was too expensive. And I can remember talking to quite a few people over the phone over the years, talking to them about this notion that, oh, it's too expensive, we can't have farmland preservation. So I would talk to them about, well, have you looked at how much it costs every time you have a housing development built in your county? So the American Farmland Trust started doing these studies called the Cost of Community Service Studies. And they would enumerate the costs that would be incurred with the addition of so many new homes in the county. And it was very easy to see that new homes do not pay for themselves, even with the tax revenue that people pay, you know, property taxes. So then that really helped some new farmland preservations come into being during that period, the late 1990s. All of those colored blotches that you see, they're all parcels of land. And the different colors represent different programs, that's all. The green is the state program. Of course, that had 20 years over the county program before the county program was created. But you still see a lot of blue there, that light blue. And then the red is Carroll County Land Trust easements and a few Maryland Environmental Trust easements. And then well, the other ones are, the purple one is the Rural Legacy Program. The Rural Legacy Program really has helped the county preserve land. If you'll notice, I mean, the first thing that you notice on this map is that the northwest quadrant of the county is where most of the farms, most of the preserved farms are. And we have various theories about why that is. It definitely means that the farmers in that area wanted to stay in farming, first of all. They wanted to stay in farming. And so that's what this program helped them do. And then, you know, and south of there too, all the way down, you know, Union Bridge, New Windsor area, a lot of preserved land. Then on the right-hand side of the county, if you divide it in half vertically, you'll see that there's still quite a bit of land, but not as much. Why? Of course, the development pressure has been higher there over the years. It's closer to Baltimore County, and land values are different there. They've always been a bit higher. We were very happy when Ralph and I were running the program to get any interest down in the southern part of the county. There are some great farms down there. So you'll see those blue blotches are the county program. So we had some really great farms come into the county program down there. You have a lot of fragmentation of land up in the upper right corner. What I mean by that is you've had a lot of land cut up into smaller pieces over the years, and so there aren't as many farms in that area to preserve. There are still some, and I mean, we did preserve quite a few farms up there, but it is quite fragmented. That's what we refer to it as. When there's been a lot of subdivision, the land has been fragmented there. So, the big success is the number of acres preserved. It's not the only way to measure success in farmland preservation, but it's just a natural way to do it. Everybody wants to know, how many acres have you preserved? Well, Carroll County, you can be very proud. 75,000 acres is a lot. And now I think we're closer to 80. I think we're almost to 80,000, right, Lynn? Yeah. So most of those are with the state program only because the state program has been around the longest. And the Critical Farms program also is in with that state program because we require, the farms that we helped people buy, we require them to go into the state program. Carroll County, so the state program, 46,000 some acres. Carroll County, 25,000 plus. The Rural Legacy has helped us, 5,400 acres. Land Trust, the Carroll County Land Trust has helped, 2,500 plus acres of preserved land. There's the total. There's the current total as of March 10th is just over 79,000. So I know it's probably past 80,000 now. So great achievement, really great achievement. Oh, here's a shameless plug for the Carroll County Land Trust. I've got a couple members on the board over there. So the Carroll County Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. And just about every county in Maryland has at least one land trust. Well, Baltimore County has 5. Harford County has 1. A couple of counties might have 2. A land trust sort of accepts donations of easements because there are some property owners who would benefit more from a donation than from being paid for an easement, although in Carroll County, not very many. But anyway, there are some. In Baltimore County, you have a lot of people who donate easements on land. That's the demographic, if you know what I mean. So if you want to participate and be part of it, you can always become a member of the Carroll County Land Trust. And this is from their website, our website. I'm on the board too. So now we can start questions. Any questions? Have you all had time to think about anything? Yes, sir in the pink shirt. No. When we get a call into the office, and I'm still acting as if I'm still program manager, I guess. I should say when they get a call. When we would get a call into the office, we would ask questions about the property and talk to them about what programs we thought would be the best fit for them. Or if we were low on money, we would tell them which programs had money. Right now. So no, they don't interfere. They all work together. Yeah. What's my telephone number? You could go online, but the phone number there is, let's see, 368? What is it? It's on the website, yeah. Carroll County Agriland Preservation. Yes, Jason. That's a good question. Yeah, the minimum is a guideline, but we looked for properties that were at least 75 acres because we're putting a lot of money up front, a lot of county money, all county money up front when we do the Critical Farms program. So 75 acres was considered a minimum guideline. We did accept a few farms that were smaller than that. I might have accepted one that was something like 68 acres. Recently there was a smaller one done, which I was not happy about. I didn't like to see that, but maybe that was just bloop and won't happen again. Yes.
You mentioned that the commissioners have cut funding this year. Does that just mean that more acreage won't be moved into the program, or will it actually negatively impact the administration and what's going on currently?
Oh, it will definitely impact it. What they'll be doing for the next year with no new funding is just settling up on the projects that they've already been working on. They may have some money left in there that they have not committed yet, but generally speaking, yeah, there's going to be a period where you're not going to have any new purchases.
They met the match so that we would get the state funding.
Who was that, Lynn?
They met the match so we would get the state funding.
Yes, yes. So there will be, right. So this July, when we send applications down to the state, those will go forward because the money was already in the pipeline for that. But I would say beginning sometime next fall, if you are applying for the program, you might not be able to get into the program right away. Hopefully the commissioners are going to see the light and, not do this again next May. But yeah, it's a possibility that I would say beginning next fall, there's going to be, if you call up with a farm you want to preserve, J.P. Smith or Jackie Bradhoon is going to say, well, you can apply, but we won't have any money this year, and you're going to have to wait. That's the way it's going to be. Jason?
It's not working, so if you could just repeat the question.
Okay. Okay.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Yes.
Let's say a farmer signs an easement and his child who inherits the farm or his grandchild who inherits the farm doesn't want any part of the farm, wants to sell the farm. Become a computer program. How is that handled? Would they only be able to sell that farm to a farmer? How would that work?
Right. So, okay, he's asking if a farmer sells an easement and down the road his grandchildren inherit the farm and they don't want a farm, what can they do? They can sell the farm, but they won't be able to sell it to a developer. And that developers are going to know that farm's off limits because there's a deed of easement in the land records restricting it. So it cannot be developed. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering how in our community, there's a lot of Amish farms. Is that going to affect your ability to sell the easements to them? I know they're not into
Right.
programs.
Right. The question is, we do have Amish families moving into Carroll County, and how is that going to affect the program? Generally speaking, the Amish community does not like to participate in government programs, but they, not all Amish men are alike. I learned this because I had quite a few of them come to my office over the last few years that I was there. They began coming about 5 years ago now. They came into my office to ask what they could do because they were buying farms that were already preserved. So they wanted to know what they could and couldn't do on the farm. So they came in with their agent. They came from Lancaster County and brought a real estate agent with them who could interpret things for them. And they were very interested in following the law and making sure they didn't get into trouble. So, and I'm not saying none of them will, participate, because there have been a few Amish farmers in Lancaster County that did donate an easement or sell an easement. One of the Amish men who came to my office, I expressed that to him, and he said, "Deborah, we're not all alike." So I'm not saying it won't happen. It could happen. It could happen that an Amish family will buy a farm and come into the office and say, we'd like to put an easement on it. It's possible, yes. Anybody else? Is that it, Jason? I don't see any other hands going up.
I think so. Thank you very much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. And I'll be happy to take any follow-up questions if you want to email me at this address or, want to see me afterwards. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your interest in this field.